So first thing, Ingram's given me a nice intro, but I thought I'd just give you a little bit of a backstory. As this is to travel folks, I'll tell you very quickly a little bit about my kind of travel experience. So these pictures here are 22 years ago. Goodness me, it makes me feel so old. I moved to a remote hut in the Costa Rican rainforest, which is actually in those bushes there. We had about 2 hours of electricity a day if we were lucky, and we had dial-up internet. And I spent 10 years there, where we actually ended up having 3 more children. We moved there with a 2-month-old. This is a picture of my daughter throwing a coconut at other coconuts. And I think the reason I'm telling this story is actually I managed to scale a sales team and grow a company from 30 people to 330 in over 30 countries in the 10 years that I was there. So kind of a lot of the tips and tricks and hacks, I guess, that I'm going to share with you today, I learned from that experience. So let's start off with, I guess, a bit of a question to you guys. I want to ask, what makes a good date? Does anyone want to put their hand up to share their dating experience? What makes a good date? Otherwise, I'm just going to pick on people. This is not a question that most people want to answer. Ingram, I've just seen you come off mute.
Well, I think anyone who's done the kind of research like I just did for you before the date would definitely be top of my list.
Okay. Let me rephrase. What about kind of how do you know if the date's going well? What kind of signs do you get off another person?
Well, Kim says here, someone who is interested in me.
Someone who's interested. Now, how do you know if someone's interested? Kind of body language, they're listening, all those types of things, right? And quite often I follow this with what makes a bad date. So even a good date can turn into a bad future date. And I guess one of the examples that I like to give is if you took someone on the same date again and again and again, however good the first date was, it would end up being pretty bad. And the reason that I mention this is so much of when I think about sales, I think about building relationships. And there are so many similarities to the dating world into the selling world and relationships. And so we're going to tuck into a couple of those themes. So one of the things, I guess, related to that, which I guess if any of you are single, you could take into the dating world, is I'm going to share some tricks with you later that allows you to get on with anyone. Because as we know from dating and as we know in life, we don't find everyone that we meet enthralling and interesting and that we want to have a conversation with. But yet, if you are going to sell effectively and build relationships with people, this is really, really important. So again, some of the themes we're going to talk about today is how do you build relationships with anyone, not just the people that you find interesting. Right. So Ingram, what we're going to do now is we're going to do a little test. As I would like everyone, Christoph, I can see you with your phone already. Very eager. I like it. No phones yet. What I would like is everyone with a surname from, let's say, what's the middle of the alphabet? H-I. Let's say everyone with a surname to H, A to H, they can scan this first QR code. So scan that.
Okay, so just everyone in the first up to H.
Oh, we've got a double act here. Christoph, I can see you. I don't know who's with you there, but I like the fact there's 2 of you doing this together. This is going to be interesting. So don't share what you're reading.
The little kinos over here in Switzerland.
Yeah. So what I'd like you to do is just read it. Keep it to yourself. Everyone's done that. Right. So the next group of you, scan this, please. And then read it. And then again, keep it to yourself. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds. And then I'd like you to put your phones away. So I've got a little timer at the top. It's pretty straightforward. I'm going to give you another 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And again, once you're done, close it, please. Throw it away. Everyone done? Yeah, it's pretty short to read. All right, put that away, please. Christoph, I know you're not paying attention because I can see you. Again, I can only see you. I'm going to pick on you the whole talk because you're the only person. I can see you, Randolph, Ingram, and Celia. So I'm afraid you're in the firing line today. All right, phones away, please. Let's carry on. So I thought it might be useful to talk a little bit about a brief history of sales. So the simple truth is that most people don't like salespeople. In fact, I onboarded a client yesterday and they said, Richard, please, when you're talking to my team, do not use the word sales. We don't actually like to use the word sales in our organization. And it's got me thinking a lot about why is that? And I think it's because when we think about sales, we think about someone like this guy, right? This is kind of what pops into our head. And there's a term in sales that I'm sure some of you are familiar with, which is called ABC, always be closing, which I hate. It's a very old-fashioned sales term. And I've started thinking a lot about where does this come from and is it still relevant today? And then if we think about what happens on LinkedIn, and this is really common when it comes to kind of B2B selling, I think it's almost even worse. So I did a little bit of research and I jumped onto Tinder, which was the first time I've ever been onto Tinder. I've been married for 26 years. I've never been on a social dating app. And I came across Ashley. So here's Ashley. And on the right-hand side is me. Now I'm guessing that Ashley is actually on a site all to do with dating. But I'm guessing that 99.99% of the time, she gets messages that say something like, hey, do you want to meet for a coffee or let's have a chat? And I see you're interested in surfing. I am too. You start off building the relationship. Yet me, on the right-hand side, I probably get 2 to 3 messages a day where people connect with me, pretending to be something that they're not, and then immediately trying to sell something to me. And as EO kind of founders, I know this happens to all of you, whether it's on LinkedIn or it's on email, and it's bizarre. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And the thing is, the future of sales has already arrived. It is time, I believe, Sorry, I think there's some background noise, if you wouldn't mind.
Just... I got it covered.
Okay, thanks, Ingram. And so what I want to talk today a little bit about is how important it is to adopt a new mentality when it comes to selling. So there's an old kind of, I guess, sales guru called Zig Ziglar. Fantastic name. I think, I wish I had a name like, I don't know, Richard something that would kind of make me stand out a little bit more. But Zig Ziglar would say the best people are the ones who put themselves in their customers' shoes and provide solutions to their problems. And what I believe in passionately is it's time to drop the ABCs. And what it's all about now is there's time for new ABCs, which is ask, build trust, and collaborate. I understand that I'm cheating a little bit with build trust, but I cannot think of a B that is related to trust. But what I'm passionate about for ABCs is ask questions, you build trust, and you look to collaborate. And the reason for this essentially is technology. It's AI, and the consumers that we're selling to are educated. So let's take the example of the car salesman. 20 years ago, 10 years ago, in fact, 5 years ago, if you went into a car dealership and you didn't know much about cars, you were at the mercy of the car dealer. They could tell you anything you want and you wouldn't have a clue. Today, you can go into the car dealership. You've got as much, in fact, maybe more knowledge than the car dealer. You can go onto ChatGPT, say, I'm interested in buying a BMW Z series, blah, blah, blah. Why should I buy it? How does it compare to this? And give me a summary. And it's the same with travel, right? So before people come to you, they can do a huge amount of research. And they've got as much research as you know yourselves. So in fact, it's not about trying to force stuff down people's throat. It's about asking the right questions so you can understand what their unique problems are, perhaps even understand the problems that they didn't know they have. You can build trust and you can actually collaborate. So for me, selling is much more about building partnerships. And here's a great example of building partnerships. So this picture here is of the confectionery brand Mentos. So about 3 years ago, the team behind Mentos decided to adopt a slightly new strategy. So I don't know if any of you have ever kind of worked in this kind of business, but if you've got a kind of a mom and pop shop and you sell confectionery, you are inundated with salespeople trying to sell you stuff to pack up, to put on your shelves. And essentially the shop owners hate them. They absolutely hate them. And what Mentos did is they decided to drop that strategy, and they would go in and instead of selling, they would advise. So they would actually go in and sometimes say, we actually think that maybe you should stock less of our product and more of this because our research shows that you'd be better off and you would make more money. And in fact, you should drop the minty flavor because in your area, people prefer the blackcurrant flavor. And what actually happened is that this spread like wildfire, and that these shop owners would actually start calling up their salespeople. They treated them as partners. And I think this is a really important mindset to understand, is that when it comes to selling, it's about building relationships and about putting yourself in a position that you can help people with their problems. So I guess that's kind of a little bit of an introduction to kind of what I feel passionately about, and whether you're in travel or selling Mentos or cars or whatever it may be, it's very, very important, I feel, to adopt this kind of new approach to selling. All right, so let's get into what I call kind of sales hacks or sales nuggets. So I've given this talk many times around the world to EO chapters. Most of the time it's called 50 nuggets of successful sales. And what I really, really like to do is give you guys some really actionable things that you can take away and implement into your business that's going to have an immediate impact on your bottom line. So, right, let's start off with a couple of things, and we'll get over these in a bit more detail. So 50% of sales goes to the vendor that responds first. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Continuous training, I prefer the word coaching, and I'll explain that in a minute, gives 50% higher net sales per employee. 44% of sales reps give up after one follow-up. I don't think that's because they're lazy. I think it's because the quality of leads is bad. And the qualification criteria adopted by companies is poor. Only 13% of customers believe a salesperson can understand their needs. So that, I think, relates a lot to what I was just saying about the ask, build, trust, and collaborate. I think it's incredibly hard to sell something to anyone if you don't understand their needs. Salespeople spend 66% of their day on administrative tasks. This is one of the worst things that I see in every organization that I work in. And the good news is it's very easy to solve. And the final one is just a reminder to me to tell you stories, and I'm aware of the irony of this stat. All right. So I am a salesperson. So I do like big kind of headings like how to grow your revenue for 2 million for free. So let's talk about this. And what you can see here are 3 different kind of formats of selling. So the key thing to look at here is in number 1, 2, and 3, the leads per month are exactly the same. They're 70 leads per month. The conversion rate in 1 is 20%, in 2 is 25%. The average revenue per client is the same, but it gives you extra revenue per year of about $1 million. And that's just from increasing your conversion rate. In the third one, again, the leads per month is 70, conversion rate is 25%, but your sales team are now better at selling more stuff. And the average package value goes from 25,000 to 35,000. Extra revenue is 2.1 million. And the reason I say you can do this for free is essentially what this means is that you're making your team perform better. And the biggest mistake I see in a lot of companies, when I come in, I start working there, they're like, Richard, we need to grow. And the big problem, and I'm all for growing, it's what I help companies do for a living. But the thing is, unless you've sorted out your sales process and your sales team, you've got a couple of big issues. And the biggest one is, 1, you're leaving money on the table, but 2, you might get false negatives on your marketing. So for example, if you wanted to grow and you were going to spend some more money on a new channel, maybe you're launching a new paid campaign or advertising campaign, maybe even launching a new product or service, you might actually think that it's not working when in fact it's a sales problem. So it's really, really important before you start any growth strategy to get this stuff sorted out. And the good news is it's not that particularly hard and it doesn't cost money. And I'm going to show you how to do it. And finally, one thing I would like to say is I've looked at hundreds of sales teams, and every single sales team I have looked at is essentially based somewhere along the lines of 50% are around good, 30%, 40% are normal, and 10% are high. And our job today is to try and get everyone towards the high level, because it's your easiest way to put money into your bottom line. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing is to treat recruitment like you're fishing for whales. Does everyone know what I mean by fishing for whales? So, fishing for enterprise clients, right? So if you're going for big enterprise clients, you adopt quite a different strategy, right? So you have a CRM, and you probably know that you're going to have to chase them down over 2 to 3 years. You're going to have to engage with them. You're going to have to meet them at conferences and associations and all those types of things. It's the same with salespeople. You've all heard again and again that the best salespeople, or the best people for that matter, aren't looking for a job. And the simple truth is that a job ad on LinkedIn or anywhere else isn't going to cut it. The only thing that's going to cut it is you. So what I strongly suggest that you do is to create I actually use the CRM. So I actually use a CRM for my hunt for A player plus talent. And I put them into the CRM, and I make a point of engaging with them, because we all know circumstances change. And I treat them like I'm hunting for an enterprise client. I check in with them. I make a point of going to meet them. I nurture that relationship, because they are absolutely invaluable, because you've just seen it on the previous slide. If you put that effort in, the impact that you're going to have is incredible. Right. So let's just take it a little step further. And I would say, particularly in travel, but pretty much in any industry that I come across, is that everyone today in your company needs to be recruited or trained with sales skills. Now, remember, I'm talking about sales I'm based off the first few of what I mentioned in the first few slides. Not always be closing. I'm talking about people that can look to add value throughout the customer relationship cycle, continually adding value and building relationships. For me, that is a sales technique. So let's have a quick look. I put some things together that I thought might be related to travel. So if you're a front desk at a restaurant or a hotel, I consult a lot to hotels, people come in. There is a huge opportunity for your front desk staff to start building a relationship, to start asking questions, to understand how they can better serve the customers there. It's the same with servers at restaurants. And in fact, I'm going to ask Ingram to share a story later about one of my favorite stories when it comes to how a server added such value kind of during the sales process. So Ingram, remind me to come back to you about that story you told me. I think it was about a bottle of champagne. Do you remember that one? You got that? Okay. Customer support. I'm going to talk about this at the end. You've basically got an army, a secret army of salespeople waiting for you if you know how to use them properly. Management. If you are a manager, for me, your job is essentially to sell constantly to your team, to sell the vision, to energize them, to move them forward. Yes, absolutely for a sales manager, but for anyone in that role. Guides, if you're taking people out on trips, you should be, how can you make their experience better? The accounts team. I know this is a really big one, but I wanted to challenge myself. We all know that one of the most important things for cash flow is getting paid earliest. There's a couple of wonderful EO speakers that I've been to. I think one of them is called Profit First by Alan Mitz. And I think it was in his book that he mentioned that, one of the key jobs of your accountant is to form a very, very good relationship with your customers, because essentially people pay the people they like first. HR, if you're in HR, if you're in recruitment, you are selling the company as much as, the person is selling you. And finally, you as business owners, your job is to sell to everybody, selling your vision constantly. And to salespeople, one of the key things for salespeople is that they need to be bought into the vision. I mean, I feel absolutely passionately that if you want to have a highly motivated sales team, that your job as the founder is to constantly sell your vision and the difference it makes to your sales team. Salespeople need that energy. And sadly, what I do see quite a lot in businesses, as soon as businesses get to a certain size, the founder tries to remove themselves as far away as possible from the sales team. And I think that's a big mistake. They need the energy. They need your vision. Right. Are your people selling? Do you remember that stat from the beginning? 66% of people, 60% of salespeople do administrative tasks. 66%. Now, there's two problems with this. The first problem is that if you are lucky enough to hire an A player and you've got them doing 66% of their stuff or admin, they'll leave. If you've got bad people, they will hide behind the administration. Good salespeople are terrible at administration. They're really, really bad at it. And I'll tell you another thing that I hear quite often is, Richard, we need to hire more salespeople. I look at the sales team, the opposite is true. In fact, they need to have less salespeople, and what they actually need are sales support people. I think this is one of the easiest and quickest things that you can do to improve the performance of your sales team. They'll love you for it. Bring them in and give them the support so they don't have to do any administration. Selling is meeting someone face to face. It is getting on the phone or seeing them on a Zoom call. Nothing else. Nothing else is selling. Sending out invoices, chasing people down, managing the CRM, producing reports. Don't have your salespeople do that. I think that was one of the worst things that happened to salespeople, was that when all the technology came in and it got more and more salespeople basically twiddling with numbers and reports. And I can't tell you how many times I see bad people hiding behind the admin. I'm sure you've heard it. Why aren't you getting to people? Oh, well, I've just got too many reports to look at. I've got this to do. I've got that to do. They hide behind it. Right. So when we talk about sales, people always talk about conversion rates. The trick to think about here, this is something you can do with your team tomorrow, is to build out your sales process so it looks a little bit like this. So you map it out, you give itself a name, and and I'm going to share this with you afterwards, but what you need to understand and what you need to build out is how you move people from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4 to step 5. When you look at your conversion rate, a lot of people will go, it's 20%, it's 25%, and that's lead to client. But if you want to improve your sales process, you need to understand where people are dropping off and why. So I think this is a really simple exercise you can do with your team in the morning. You can draw it up, get your team to work through it, and start trying to understand why people drop out. I do want to talk about a couple of things in here. So first of all, under owner, you can see that sales support owns 3 of these steps. I talked about that a minute ago. And the other thing I want to talk about quickly is communication method. So you've got 3 examples here. You've got phone, email, WhatsApp. Let's also throw in LinkedIn. People generally tend to communicate in different ways. If a lead comes into my business, this is my process. I phone them, and I'm going to talk about speed in a minute. I will phone them, and then I'll phone them twice if they don't answer. Why? Because if someone gets a phone, a lot of people don't pick up the phone from numbers they don't know. But if you phone them, if you put the phone down and phone it again, I call it the double tap method. They think it's like an emergency from the school or something like that, and they nearly always pick up. Then what I always do is I follow up with an email, and then I follow up with WhatsApp, and then I follow up with LinkedIn. And generally over the course of, you've basically got 24 hours to kind of get into that person. Otherwise, it becomes a cold lead. So you need to use a multitude of communication methods to try and get hold of people. I know it differs from country to country. I was giving this talk in Germany, and there was a look of shock and horror that absolutely you can never, ever message anyone on WhatsApp in a kind of a business situation. I get that. But I guess the point is to use a mixture of communication methods to engage with people. All right, we'll come to a few of other these things as we move through. This is a really quick one. If I could see all of you right now, I would say, has anyone here asked their salesperson to be their sales manager, their best salesperson to be their sales manager? I've done it. Yeah, Ingram's done it. Most people have done it. I know why you do it. You do it because they come to you and they say, hey, I want a promotion, and they're their best person. So you let them do it. And 2 things have happened. One, you've lost your best salesperson, and most salespeople, in fact, nearly every single one I've ever come across, are terrible at being managers. The problem is actually it's the term manager. So actually, if we were to rephrase or rename sales manager as sales operations, I can tell you right now, there's no salesperson alive that wants to work in sales operations. And essentially, that is what the sales manager's job is. It is sales operations. So I would say that if you want to reward your best performing salespeople, what you need to do is look at titles, you can look at remuneration, you can look at commission structures, and you can explain to them clearly what the role of a sales operations person is. And I think that creates a very kind of different vibe within the team. And in my experience, the best sales managers or kind of sales operations can actually come from the sales support team. They can come from HR. They tend to be very project focused because their job is to make sure that reports and the data is being filled in. They're in charge of onboarding, coaching, retraining, those types of things. It is rare. It can happen. And I've seen it happen at Core that you can find the best salespeople that do become sales managers, but it's rare. Right. Your main sales KPI is not trackable. So when I give this talk in person, I normally sit down on a chair and I kind of relax. And what I say to people is, do you feel a difference in the room? And they do. Well, I think they do. I mean, you know, people put their hand up. I think they feel they have to say yes, but, you know, I think they do. And then I stand up, and as I stand up, I say, Harvard Business School did a study about 5 years ago that showed when salespeople stood up on the phone, talking to a salesperson, talking to a potential customer, their conversion rates went up 2.3%. So your main sales KPI is your sales team's energy. I think we can probably all feel it, that when we stand up, our energy is a lot higher. So yes, one of the things that you could do is you could buy all of your sales team stand-up desks, or you could even take away their desks, and you could get headphones and all those types of things. But there's a ton of things that you need to think about when thinking about how to maintain your sales team's energy. I've already touched upon what I think is the biggest one, and that is that the visionary, the CEO of the company, needs to be constantly selling their vision and the difference their product or service makes. That is absolutely critical. Your salespeople will not sell effectively if they do not believe in it like you. That's really, really important. The second thing you can do is you can have daily sales huddles. You can get everyone together and you can ask people things like, you know, what's the thing, you know, you need to set their energy up for the day. So you can, you know, I always say, what's the thing that you were most proud of achieving yesterday, personal or business wise? I say, what is the one thing that you want to achieve today? And what is the one thing that is stopping you from doing that? And those are just those three questions. If you're, you know, it's called a daily huddle. I think it's actually sometimes called a stand up. The idea is to keep it short. You stand up and you get it over and done with in 3 minutes, because we all know that having a long meeting in the morning is the worst way to build up a team's energy. In fact, I know one company that actually does this while planking. So if you really want to kind of, you know, get the energy going, you get everyone planking and then you kind of get the energy going. But, you know, there's a ton of other things you can do. You can get your team to set the weekly targets. I know that sounds counterintuitive, and you're probably thinking, why on earth would I get my team to set the weekly targets to help me reach the monthly ones? The thing is, they will almost certainly set them higher than you would, and then they would have ownership over the targets. I'm a big, big believer in having the targets very, very visible on the wall in front of your sales team. And I'm also a massive believer, to follow on from that salespeople should be in the office. They feed off each other. Another thing that you could do is that the founder should maybe take one sales call in front of the sales team per week. I think that shows their commitment to the team, and people will learn off that. And I'll just give you one other final kind of nugget. I'm a big believer in surprise, what I call kind of surprise awards. And I'll talk about commission structures later, but people get very used to them. And what I really like is, if you've got your salespeople in the room, I've got it right now in my top drawer. I've got a drawer full of vouchers. I've got vouchers for Amazon. I've got vouchers for Apple. And I love to reward people on the spot, so it's a surprise. You've got to keep it fun. You've got to keep the energy high. It's really, really important. All right. Fastest wins. So you heard earlier that 50% of sales goes to the vendor that responds first. So my business partner founded a company called Streetcar in the United Kingdom, and he built it to, well, he sold it. He sold it to Zipcar and listed it on the NASDAQ and made a ton of money. And he actually ended up having 200 salespeople. And I've spoken to him a lot about the secrets to his success. And one of the things he said to me is, who responds first wins. So let me give you an example. When I work with sales teams, I say every single lead has to be responded to in under 7 seconds. Every single one. And by the way, that does not mean an automated email. That does not count. And the reason for that is you have competitors. And when you respond first, if you respond in under 7 seconds, your chances of reaching them are about 91%. If you respond to them after 2 minutes, it goes down to about 28%. And the reason for that is we are all very busy people. And when we submit an inquiry, we move on to the next thing, the next Zoom call, the next meeting, blah, blah, blah. And there's one thing that salespeople hate. It is chasing leads down. And there's one thing that weirdly we hate as customers is being chased by people that we've inquired with. So do yourself a favor. The first thing that you can do tomorrow, again, as I said, you could grow your revenue by 2.1 million. You can do this tomorrow. You can make it part of your culture. Yes, I've done it. It can work. It's not that hard. Call every single inquiry back within 7 seconds. My business partner had it set up so that when an inquiry came in and hit the CRM, it would actually dial out the phone that wasn't active on the salesperson's desk. And he got it down to 2.3 seconds. So I think this is probably one of the easiest things that you can do to improve your sales conversion rate. And you can do it tomorrow. Right. You guys have all heard of a playbook, right? Sales playbook? Yeah. Ingram, yes. Carol's a yes. Christoph, no. All right. So a sales playbook is essentially your way of selling. So it's all written out. And it's going to have things in there like your closing techniques, what objections you have. It's going to have your lead nurturing process. It's going to have your kind of custom avatars. It's going to have your phrases that pay. And this is a living, breathing document. And actually, you could just go onto ChatGPT and say, give me the best, ways to build out a playbook. And then you can work with your sales team to start building that out. So why do you have a playbook? You have a playbook so you have one way of doing things. You don't want to have lots of different things happening in your team, and you have it as a way to collect all the knowledge. So for example, let's take objection handling. So there is no company in the world that has more than 13 objections. Not one. I've given this talk 40, 50 times, and I've said it in rooms in front of hundreds of people. And I said, if anyone can come to me with a company with more than 13 objections, I'll buy the whole room a drink. It's never happened. So what does that mean? What that means is you understand what your objections are, which is easy because your sales team will tell you, and then you practice how you handle them. And that a playbook is a sports term. It comes from an American sports term. So all American sports teams have playbooks. This is what we're going to do on the pitch. And then this is the key thing here about playbooks. When you have a playbook, you coach, you coach, you coach. So you build your playbook and then you coach. So again, let's use objections as an example. If your sales team are regularly coached on how to handle objections, they'll answer them with confidence, they'll answer them with humor, and when they get really, really good, they'll be able to actually switch them into positive conversations. So when I mean coaching, you don't need someone like me to come in and set it up. You don't need a high, powered sales director. This is something that you can set up easily. I would advocate doing it once a week for 15 minutes. You get into groups of 3. One is the customer, one is the salesperson, one is the observer. You pick a topic and you practice for 15 minutes, you role play it, 5 minutes each side, and then you move on. Very quick, very easy. It is the only way that your sales team will improve. And as you saw from the first nugget at the beginning, I think it said that sales teams that are regularly trained get 50% more return. All those stats from some Salesforce and HubSpot. It really makes a big difference. And it's fun. You can make it really, really fun. So if you haven't got a sales playbook now, I would really encourage you to build one. It's a living, breathing document. And if you're going to do one thing, I would start with objection handling and getting your sales team to practice on that, because that's what most people find really, really hard. And then you can start looking at things like closing techniques, upselling, and things like that. All right, let's move on. If you do one thing, so I'm going to play a video now. It's a very short video, but I'd love you to have a think about this. So let's check, see if this works. Ingram, here we go.
We don't use questions enough when we pitch. And there's some really good evidence showing that we should. The reason is this: questions by their very nature elicit an active response. So if I ask you a question, the wheels have to turn just a little bit in their heads. Statements, that's not the case. I make a statement, you make a statement, it can wash over people. And so what happens is that when you ask a question, people's wheels turn just a little bit. They're more likely to engage. And as a consequence of this, if you have a very strong set of facts on your side, if the evidence is very clearly on your side, persuading with questions is enormously effective. What does it do? It engages the listeners, gets them to process the facts, gets them to evaluate the evidence, and here's the kicker, gets them to come up with their own reasons for agreeing with you. When people have their own reasons for agreeing with you, they believe those reasons more deeply and adhere to the behavior more strongly.
So
we don't use
sorry, hang on, let me just move on. So do you remember the new ABCs that I mentioned at the beginning? Ask, build trust, collaborate. Ask questions. The best salespeople ask a lot of questions and they listen. I cannot tell you how many sales calls I've had where I've just listened. I've just listened. I just ask good questions and I follow up. In fact, when I hire salespeople, the final step is I take them out for dinner and I see how good a conversationist they are. I see, can they ask questions and can they listen? So I said at the beginning that I was going to give you a hack on how to get on with anyone. It's a simple one, but I find it very effective. So as we know, we don't get on with everyone that we meet, and we don't find everyone that we meet interesting. And another thing with sales is or relationships for that matter, is it's very important to be authentic. Because actually, when we talked about dating at the beginning, you can sense if someone is being authentic or not. So the question that I always ask questions that I have an interest in the answer to. So I don't care what it is that you're selling or what it is that you're trying to do. If you adopt that approach, that's the way to start forming a relationship with someone. And you essentially can get on with anyone. So with the right questions, you're going to be able to find something that you can ask that will allow you to start building a relationship. So essentially, the mentality is to stop trying to sell and to start building a relationship. And moving on to that, and I'm now going to pick on Christoph here. So Christoph, I'm picking on you because there's two people here, and I think you both read something different, didn't you? Is that right?
We did.
Okay. So Christoph, I think you read the first QR code. Is that right? Or the second one?
Second.
Okay. Sorry, what's the name of the person sitting next to you?
My name is Anaëlle.
Anaëlle. Hi. So you read the first one, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So you're not allowed to look at it. I see you looking down. I hope you're cheating. Can you tell everyone what you read, please?
It was something about innovation.
Yeah.
I really remember.
It's hard, eh?
I mean, you said so many things that now I can't remember what I read, to be honest.
Okay.
It's about innovation and engineer.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to make you feel better. I wrote that and I have probably read it 50 times, so I still can't really remember it.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Christoph, what did you read?
About this lovely guy who got picked up by this woman in a sports bar watching a football game of his favorite club. I think it was Arsenal. And he woke up in an ice bath, his kidney removed, and the telephone scotched onto his hand and said, call 911, otherwise you die. Something along that.
You're exactly right. You've missed out two things. Can you remember the score of the game?
2-1.
Ah, it was 3-1. Close. And can you remember the color of the girl's eyes?
God, this was a long time ago, Rich. Yeah.
They were brown. So you guys, listen, facts tell, but stories sell. It's very.
Did you see this? It was 2-1. Hang on.
Oh, was it? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so you're right, apart from the eyes. Okay, I'm not looking at the chat. Guys, it is very, very noisy out there. And I'm afraid to say that when you're engaging with people, the number one thing that you need to do is be remembered. And the best way to be remembered is to create stories. You all have stories to sell. You have stories about why the company was founded. You have stories about the amazing value that you've given to your customers. You need to build stories into your sales pitch. It is critical. So, has anyone seen Fight Club? Yeah? What's the first rule of Fight Club?
Don't talk about the Fight Club.
Yeah, you don't talk about the Fight Club. So it's the same actually with Sales Club. And what I mean by that is you don't act like a salesperson. And what that means is you don't change your voice, you don't beg for time, you don't put yourself in a dismissive role, you act like a peer. I talked about this at the beginning, not someone trying to pitch and control and to push. Nothing kills a deal faster than acting like a salespeople, because people don't want to deal with salespeople. They do want to solve problems and they do want to learn and they want to find out what's going on, but they don't want to be pushed around by you. Then they certainly do not want to be tricked. So I think this is a really important thing for your sales team to understand, and it can have a huge impact. And I think it links a lot to what we talked about earlier. So when I used to give this talk, I was told, I always started off by saying, I'm not going to talk about commission structures because it's very complicated. And at the end of the talk, everyone said, Richard, I've just got one question. It was always about commission structures. So here we go. I'm going to give you the top 3 commission structures in the whole world. Right. Before we get into that, I just want to talk about something. I'm talking about commission. So when you talk about remuneration, it is base, it is incentives, and it's commission. Base, you all know what I'm talking about. Incentives is what you pay someone for activity metrics. So activity metrics are how many emails you've sent or phone calls you've made or people you have met. But of course, activity metrics do not equal success, right? This is a huge generalization. I always get asked this question, but generally base 50%, incentives 10%, commission 40%. I'm going to talk about commission, all right? Here's a very quick one. The daily, I doubt it's relevant to most of you. Targets are set daily, commission is paid daily in cash, and it's highly motivating, and targets can be based on real-time information. This was my first ever job. I was a squidgy at traffic lights. I would set my target for the day. I needed to clean 50 windows. I'd make about $50 when I was backpacking around Australia, and that was enough to pay for my night at the Backpackers and a few beers. That was my target. I got paid in cash. I loved it. It was highly motivating. Right, let's move on. Gross profit pool. Targets set monthly, targets adjusted weekly to maintain the sales team's energy. This is really important. A month is a long time. If your sales team are going to know very, very quickly if they're going to hit that target or not. The commission pool set is based on targets reached by the team, right? So this is important. It's set on targets reached by the whole team, but it's paid out on the individual performance. And what this means is that your poor performers, if people are performing badly, they're reducing the team commission pool. So they're actually taking money out of their colleagues' pockets. This is really, really motivating. if you think about it, particularly if this information is shared on a live screen or something like that and it's updated weekly. They are literally stopping their colleagues from earning more money. All right? So I use this in a lot of companies. It's highly effective. Now, the next one I actually do use in my travel company. And I have 12 people working in there, and we've split them into 2 teams, Division 1 and Division 2. This is quite hardcore, but bear with me. Division 1 gets a higher base salary and a higher commission pool, so they earn more money. The targets are set, everything else is the same, but here's the kicker. At the end of the month, the worst performer from Division 1 moves down to Division 2, and the top performer moves up. Now, this is pretty hardcore, but I love it. It's really effective. I think great salespeople love it. And the great thing is your bottom performers are gonna move on, because no one likes being bottom of the division again and again and again. Really, really effective. Right, I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to be really, really fast here. Outbound sales, if any of you is in B2B, I'm going to give you this is something that normally I do over 3 to 4 hours. I'm going to try to do it in 2 to 3 minutes. So B2B has changed a lot. So back in the 1980s, this was a picture of Ingram, who used to walk around with 2 martinis and coffee cups and his mobile phone and his really nice leather jacket. And he would knock on doors, he'd go meet people, and he would sell. You would get in your car, you'd drive half an hour, and then you would sell to someone. And then technology came on, people didn't have to do that. And then COVID happened, and people retreated more and more behind their screens. It's really become an issue. And as I said earlier, we are getting bombarded with email and LinkedIn messages, which essentially we find very irritating, and they're unpersonalized. And people have started tuning off. I cannot tell you how many people have come to me and said, Richard, our old tactics don't work anymore. I mean, how many times can you send an email saying, hey, did you get my last email? It's not possible. So what you need to do is you need to adopt a different strategy. I call it getting back to the 80s. And what I like to do is I like to use technology to allow you to engage and meet with prospects, either digitally or ideally in person. So this is Tim Ferriss. And I love this quote, because I don't think still people just really don't do it. Being able to meet in person, I think, is one of the biggest advantages that you have in today's virtual world. And one of the KPIs that I love to use with my outbound, whether I'm working with an outbound sales team, is how many coffees per week are you actually having? How many people are you meeting face to face? Some of you are thinking, oh no, but I've got special spam. You know, I'm using AI to create really special spam. You don't have special spam. We can all see it a mile away. It doesn't work. It's time to drop it. It's time to kind of go back to the 80s and let technology be your friend. All right, guys, I'm going to finish off with one final thing. The 3 pillars of successful sales. Pillar number 1 is all the stuff that I talked to you about. I hope you got good value out of it. A lot of the stuff you can implement very quickly. Number 2 is you need to have a good product or service. I mean, I can't help you with that, but you're an EO. I assume you do. But the truth is, great salespeople won't want to sell anything but a good product or service. I've talked about that before. You've got to sell it to your team. And number 3, I mentioned this at the beginning, is you have a secret army. So there, I know this is correct because I put into ChatGPT. So I'm going to tell you a very quick little story about a travel company. In fact, it's a small chain of hotels on the East Coast of the United States. And what they did is they gave all of their customer-facing staff a small monthly budget towards client satisfaction, customer satisfaction. And one of the stories I heard was a server went up to a table and said to a family, how was last night? And the family said, actually, it wasn't very good. We didn't sleep very well. There was noise. We called and maintenance came up and they took half an hour and it made it worse and blah, blah, blah. What would normally happen is you would hear the most horrifying words in the English language, particularly when you're on vacation, which is, let me speak to my manager. You don't want to do that. What this person did is, I'm so sorry to hear that, breakfast is on us. You have got an opportunity to empower all members of your staff to act as kind of as salespeople. As I said earlier, what can you do to really, really empower your staff to make sure that your customers have an amazing experience. So I gave this talk, the biggest audience I've ever given this talk to is about 350 people. And I said to them, when was the last time that you had amazing customer service? 6 hands went up. 6. And what this stat here says is that if you take 10 customers and they tell 2 customers about the amazing customer service they had, and you repeat that, that's how many free customers you're going to get. You've got an opportunity to create an army of salespeople using amazing customer service. And I believe that one of the ways to do that is to adopt a new era of selling that I've been talking about. So I've taken Zig Ziglar's quote and I've crossed it out and I've tweaked it and I've put my name at the bottom. The best salespeople are the ones who partner with their customers to help them uncover problems they did not know they had. Because as I said at the beginning, a lot of people know the problems that they have, but if you can help them with problems they didn't even know they have to make their experience even better, and I think, travel and hospitality is a wonderful example of this, then you've got a really, really good opportunity to empower the whole of your team to create amazing experiences and get lots of referrals. So, as I said, finally, just remember, ask, build trust, and collaborate. Thank you so much.
You're brilliant, Rich. I've scribbled a lot. I don't know if anyone's got any questions. While you're thinking of them, I wanted to you asked about the lady at Steen, the customer service diamond.
Thanks, Ingrid.
And it was quite similar. So I was at a wine farm, and I had a friend from England over, and it was his wife's. It was their 20th anniversary. So I don't know why they invited us out with them. That was very kind. And so we went out, and she had been particularly brave on holiday. So she'd gone shark diving, and none of her 15-year-old kids and stuff would get in. Teenagers would get in the cage and that type of thing. And it was kind of out of character. So I got her this champagne called Lady R, and I really butchered the story about this lady who had 5 husbands. One died. She came here in the 1680s from Germany, started a farm, and then one died from an elephant attack. And the lady that was listening to me butcher the story didn't let on and went away and printed out the story, brought it over to us, and then gave it to us. And that then became, we were only having a bottle of champagne to start the evening. That was drunk all evening, and they bought a case to take home with them to the UK. But she just on her own went away, came back and said, actually, this is this amazing story that I was trying to connect them with over that meal. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, it's a really good example. Thanks.
So we're at 6 o'clock. I don't know if has anyone got any questions. I'm going to post this recording on the group.
Ingrid, we can also share the deck as well.
Okay, perfect. That'd be very kind.
And also within the deck is there's actually a sales grader. So it's like a free tool that you can log on to. You can answer a bunch of questions, and it gives you a score and recommendations of how well you're doing in selling.
Yeah.
Yes, Christoph.
Just a quick one. Rich, do you have any good examples or an advice for, we are too small to hire a full-time salesperson of outsourcing that service?
So are you in B2B or B2C?
Both. So we have a luxury hospitality brand.
Yeah. So you absolutely can, but I would look to outsource the administration side of it. So that's what I was talking about earlier in terms of the kind of sales support kind of stuff. But would it be both of you doing the selling at the moment, and going out and engaging with people and things like that? Or?
We're very terrible at this. No one is doing it actively.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, this is something that comes up a lot. I work, with founders who are still involved in the sales process and trying to remove themselves from it. What I will tell you is the biggest mistake that I see people make is hiring an expensive business development person with a proven track record in their industry and and expect them to do everything, because it's not a one-person job. What I would encourage you to do is to, you know, build the process, like we talked about, and then hire and this is the cool thing, relatively cheap. You can hire, you know, you can outsource the sales support stuff to do all of the administration, look after the CRM, do the following up, you know, can do a lot of the work and allow you just to have the conversations, because effectively that's the hardest bit to outsource, and that's the bit that I would say that is the very, very final step that you should only do when your business is growing so fast that you have no other choice. But it's full of risk, that bit. So tread carefully, but you can get rid of pretty much everything else.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Yeah, I think, Rich, when you came and looked at what we were doing, taking that, in the luxury safari industry at the moment, there's a shortage of experts and salespeople. So everyone's fighting for the same people, and so we were overwhelmed with leads, which is quite a nice situation to be in. We thought we'd stripped out the administration, but actually, when you have the salesperson literally doing the talking and getting it over the line, and absolutely everything else, the follow through and everything was done by a very good, I mean, we had to train the sales support team. We had an admin team and a sales support that we actually, we actually needed less people. It was quite a game changer in terms of those really knowledgeable salespeople at the top, just like everything handed over. It made a huge difference.
Well, I mean, you know, finding really, really good salespeople is really hard, and they're very expensive. If they're good, they know they're good. I mean, they're salespeople, they're commercial, they know the value they bring in. So getting them to do anything else apart from selling is absolutely nuts. It just doesn't make any sense. So, you know, you can build, you know, as I said, just build everything else. And also, and I know I mentioned it before, but it's so important. The best salespeople will just leave straight away if you get them doing anything else apart from selling, but particularly if they're commission based, because they know it's a waste of their time. They know that what makes the deal is them having good conversations with people. So yeah, really, really important.
Yeah, I like that. Changing the names. So sort of salespeople had adventure architects. Sounded a bit cheesy to start off with, but you were putting people's adventures together. It made a much more, started the conversation off quite well. How can I, and then instead of a sales manager, a head adventure architect, because like that, like who really leads by example, the head of the sales team, but not managing it. I kind of, coming up with different titles seemed to help quite a lot. So I think in travel, and I think Christoph is in the luxury section, that typical sales sort of way of doing things, I do think is a bit off-putting.
Yeah, and I think it's only becoming more and more so. And I think we're just going to see more and more companies adopting different titles for their salespeople. But of course, I mean, it's already happening, and I can't tell you how many people reach out to me using another title. I connect, and then they try to sell. That's even more annoying. Then I just block them forever. So, you know, you kind of have to walk the talk, and that's what I was trying to get through at the beginning. I think, you know, if you're going to call you a partnership manager or client relationship manager, you have to focus on how do you partner with people? How do you improve the relationship? You know, you have to do those things first. And then that's when the magic happens. It's still astonishing to me that people still try to sell so hard and so fast at, you know, top of the funnel. And I, you know, those tactics have not got long for this world.
So has anyone else got anything for Rich, or are we? I feel like an auctioneer, calling once, calling twice. I'll post your details, Rich.
Yeah, I hope it was useful. Nice to connect with you all. I'll send you my deck. Happy, you know, if you have any other questions, I'm very happy to ping you an answer.
You still live in the jungle, Rich.
I don't live in the jungle anymore.
What
So,
happened?
but I had 4 children and they needed to be educated.